Meeting to order. And I want to say welcome to everyone in the room and to those watching. This is, get our stuff together. Okay, awesome. So this is our first meeting of the Virginia Commission to End Hunger. And so we have our agenda in front of us. The first thing we want to do is see who's here with us in the room. And so I'm going to start with my colleague, Delegate Anthony, and then we'll go down the top row and then down the lower row and see who all is here in the room with us.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. So my name is Delegate Benita Anthony. I represent House District 92, which covers portions of Norfolk and northern Chesapeake.
And I realize the delegates and senators, we're used to doing this. For our citizen commissioners, would love for you to let us know your name, where you're coming from, and what of your experience would bring you to this particular commission.
Thank you. Hi, Senator Christy New Craig. I represent District 19, which encompasses parts of Chesapeake and Virginia Beach.
Delegate David Owen. I represent the 57th District, which is Western Henrico and Eastern Goochland.
My name is Robin Robbins. I'm from Southwest Virginia. I represent Appalachian Sustainable Development and the work that we've done with the Food Box Program and feeding about 6,000 families a month. And it's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Rakia Fagans. I am from Newport News, Virginia. I work for Feeding America as their manager for nutrition services. I am also a registered dietitian, and before working for Feeding America, I worked at the Virginia Peninsula Food Bank as their health initiatives manager.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Montgomery, and I am the CEO at Loudoun Hunger Relief in Loudoun County, Virginia. We are a direct service provider, pantry, providing food to about 17,000 Loudoun residents a year.
Hello, my name is Eddie Oliver. I'm the Executive Director of the Federation of Virginia Food Banks, work with all 7 regional Feeding America food banks in the state and our 1,100 partner agencies to build partnerships statewide to improve nutrition security.
Hello, my name is Vivica Craik. I'm Associate Professor at Virginia Tech in Blacksburg, Virginia, and I'm here as an academic member and also to learn about what's happening at the state level. I've worked a lot with hunger, food insecurity, nutrition security at the national and global levels, and I'm very interested in applying my skills at the state level.
Good afternoon. My name is Pamela Irvine, and I'm the CEO of Feeding Southwest Virginia. And I come to you today with 43 years of experience in developing partnerships and addressing food insecurity within the predominantly rural communities of Southwest Virginia.
Good afternoon. My name is Ipiana Spencer, and I'm the Chief Health Officer at Meals on Wheels America, where we work to end food insecurity amongst our nation's most vulnerable adults, which is our seniors.
Awesome, thank you. And I'm Delegate Cia Price. I've been serving since 2016. I am also from Newport News, Virginia, and I would I carried the bill that established the commission. Really excited about the work that we're going to do together. I am going to ask for Senator Rome, who is with us online, to introduce herself, and then we'll have our staff introduce themselves. Senator Rome?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Danica Rome. I represent the 30th District of the State Senate, which includes the cities of Manassas, Manassas Park, as well as Western Prince William County. I served 6 years in the House of Delegates previously with Delegate Price as well. And between my 7 years in office, we've now passed 14 of my bills to feed hungry kids and another 2 bills to feed hungry adults. So my ultimate goal is universal free school meals for all kids. And in the meantime, anything that I can do to be helpful in the realm of ending all hunger, childhood, and adult, I am all in. So thank you so much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator, and we'll see you soon. And I'll start with Julia for staff introductions.
My name is Julia Bergamini, and I'm with the Division of Legislative Services.
My name is Faith Holmes, and I am the fellow for the Division of Legislative Services.
I'm Kathy Ho with House Committee Operations.
I'm Tiffany Harris-Green with House Committee Operations.
Awesome, thank you. And we also have our friend Tracy in there helping us with IT. So thank you all for being here. We are going to do a roll call for those of us and have an actual record of who all was here. So if we can get that going, and then we'll move into our official elections.
Delegate Price.
Here.
Delegate Anthony.
Here.
Delegate Cousins. Delegate Owen. Here. Delegate Taylor. Senator Rome. I see that you're there.
Here and on the way.
Senator Pekarsky. Senator Craig. Here. Nicholson. Irvine.
Here.
Craik.
Here.
Spencer.
Here.
Williams Ford. Oliver. Here. Montgomery. Here. Fagans. Here. Ahmed. Robbins.
All right, so we do have a quorum here, and the senator is on the way. So our first order of business is to elect a chair and vice chair. So I'm remembering, I'm going to send that over to Ms. Tiffany to handle that election for us.
Thank you, Delegate Price. Nominations are now in order to elect a chair.
I would like to nominate Delegate Marcia Price as chair.
Seconded, Senator Rome.
It has been moved and seconded that the Virginia Commission to End Hunger elect Delegate Price as chair. Are there any further nominations? Is there a motion to close the nominations? All those in favor of electing Delegate Price as chair, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
The motion passes. Congratulations, Delegate Price.
Thank you so much. And now I'll open the nominations for vice chair and would accept any nominations at this time.
I move to nominate Senator Rome as vice chair.
It's been moved and properly seconded for us to have Senator Rome serve as our vice chair. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And so thank you and congratulations, Senator Rome. And I think for those that are not familiar, we'll see why that was such a fitting choice for vice chair when we hear her name when we get our overview of legislation soon. So now I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Julia to discuss our virtual meeting policy so that we can get that intact. And to let you all know, I know that we're coming from all different corners of the Commonwealth. We will try to maximize your time and respect your time by having meetings only when we need to and for only the amount of time that we need to, but I know that we all know how important this work is. So we again thank you for your willingness.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the virtual meeting policy notes are before each of the members. It is the proposed policy for the virtual meetings of this commission. No commission may hold a virtual meeting until it adopts a virtual meeting policy. The virtual meeting policy is the standard virtual meeting policy. It's mainly set forth in section 2.2-3708.3 of the code. And there are two types of remote participation that the commission will be adopting if it adopts this policy. The first is remote participation by an individual member. The policy states that any individual member may participate remotely by providing advance notice to the chair through the commission staff for one of the reasons set forth in that code section for remote participation. These include temporary or permanent disability or medical condition of a family member, if the member's principal residence is greater than 60 miles from the meeting location, or a personal matter identified with specificity. Now, there is one limitation on that final reason for remote participation, personal matter. An individual member may only remotely participate due to a personal matter 2 meetings per calendar year or 25% of the meetings held per calendar year, whichever is greater. And finally, any request will be approved unless it would violate Commission policy or the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. Next, there's all virtual public meetings, and this would be a meeting in which all members of the Commission participate remotely. As similar to the remote participation, this may be held at the request of the Commission to the Chair through Commission staff in accordance with the procedural requirements set forth in subsection C of that code section, which include public notice requirements and requirements in accordance with Virginia's Freedom of Information Act. Additionally, all virtual public meetings are limited to 2 meetings per calendar year or 25% of the meetings held per calendar year rounded up to the next whole number, whichever is greater. Finally, the Commission may not hold an all virtual public meeting consecutively with another all virtual public meeting. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are there any questions from any of our Commission members on the virtual public meeting policy that you have before us? Okay, if there are no questions, if I can get a motion for us to adopt that policy.
Madam Chair, I move to adopt the electronic meeting participation in all virtual public meetings policy.
It's been moved and properly seconded that we will adopt that. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Oh, I'm sorry. That does have to be a recorded vote. So we're going to ask for Ms. Harris-Green to call the roll.
Delegate Price?
Aye.
Delegate Anthony?
Aye.
Delegate Owen? Senator Rome?
Aye.
Senator Craig? Pamela Irvine?
Aye.
Vivica Craik? I'm going to mess this up. Ipiana Spencer? I apologize if I messed that up. Eddie Oliver? Jennifer Montgomery? Rakia Fagans? And Robin Robbins.
Okay, so that has passed unanimously. And just to, I know some of us had spoken about it before, so that as we're thinking about our work group, I do want to put out there that for any recommendations this year, legislators have to get our draft requests in the month of November. And so we want to keep that in mind if we can't have consecutive all virtual meetings, what that might look like, but we'll definitely get a schedule to you and so that we'll all know it ahead of time. So I had a fun fact that I wanted to share before we jump into the next part, and that's from my research and my understanding, the last time that we had a commission on hunger in this way, a legislative commission, was in 1985. And so I did a little bit of digging, and with the help of a friend, we have that document here. And as we dig into some of these proposals, fortunately, we have the record, but unfortunately, we are still fighting some of the same issues and still working to protect some of the same populations. But you all are now on the continuum of history that is dedicated to working on these issues. And other fun fact, the chair of that was then Delegate Robert Scott, and that was my uncle. And so there's a little family connection to this, so I am very proud of us being able to get this done today. But I would love now to turn back to Julia to give us an overview for this year's iteration of the establishment of the commission. It was done through House Bill 608. So there are some legal constraints that we have to what it is that we're supposed to do. And then we'll ask for any questions. And then we'll jump right into an overview of some of the previous legislative matters that have been passed so that we get an idea of what's been done at least since 2020. Julia?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can everybody hear me okay? Fabulous. Okay, so we will be beginning with the fifth item on the agenda, which is the overview of the commission purpose. As Madam Chair already stated, this was established by HB 607, which she patroned this past session. And it was established for the stated purpose of developing an action plan every 2 years for ending hunger in the Commonwealth, reviewing the progress of such plan, and ensuring cross-collaboration among government entities and community partners toward the goal of ending hunger in the Commonwealth. The commission objectives, or the powers and duties of the commission in doing that work and developing that action plan, include identifying funding sources that could be used for improving nutrition and hunger in the Commonwealth, identifying strategies for ensuring each public school student has access to nutritious meals and snacks at school, and this includes promoting full participation in all federally assisted school meal and snack programs, identifying barriers to food access and developing sustainable policies and programs to address those barriers, promoting and facilitating public-private partnerships, and developing benchmarks and set goals to indicate success. The Commission also has annual reporting requirements to annually report to the General Assembly and Governor, and the Chair to submit to the Governor and General Assembly an annual executive summary of the Commission's work and progress in the interim. Now I'll pause briefly before we move on to the next agenda item.
Yeah, are there any questions? And we encourage you to think of some of these terms in broad ways. So when we're looking at obstacles, it might be, as we've heard recently, the taste of the meals, right? That's still an obstacle to that. So whatever your lived experience or expertise brings to this, we welcome. Any questions? No? Awesome. Please keep going.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Next, we have agenda item number 6, which is an overview of relevant legislation from the preceding 3 sessions, so 2024, 2023, and 2022. These are broken up into 3 categories based basically on the entity at which the provisions of the bill are directed. So first, we'll have education, which includes public elementary and secondary schools, as well as public institutions of higher education, health, welfare, and social services, and then a miscellaneous category. All right, so we're beginning with education. First, we have SB 283, patroned by Senator Rome. And this bill passed the General Assembly, so it was a Section 1 bill. It was passed as Chapter 586 of the 2024 Acts of Assembly. And this bill requires the Superintendent of Public Instruction, in coordination with the Secretary of Education, to convene a stakeholder work group to study the estimated impact of offering free meals to students statewide, identifying options for reducing or eliminating student and school meal debt, and making recommendations on options for leveraging other programs funded at both state and federal levels for the provision of student school meals. And finally, the work group is directed to report its findings and recommendations to the Joint Subcommittee on Elementary and Secondary Education by this November 1st. Now, this bill did have these 2 bills that were similar or identical to it. However, keep in mind that those 2 bills are identical or similar to SB 283 as it was introduced. As it was introduced, as you can see in that summary, it was a bit more expansive. It required each school board to require each school in the school division to participate in the federal national school lunch and breakfast programs or in the community eligibility provision, and to make lunch and breakfast available to any student who requests that meal at no cost to the student. It required the Department of Education to reimburse each public school for each breakfast and lunch served to a student at a maximum of 1 breakfast and 1 lunch per student per school day. It established a formula for the state reimbursement rate. And finally, it established essentially the same work group as the bill as passed established. So we have Delegate Bennett Parker's HB 686 from this past session that was identical to SB 283 as introduced. That failed. And then we had HB 1967 from 2023, patroned by then Delegate Mullen, which also failed. Next, we have HB 827, patroned by Delegate Cousins, which does require the State Council of Higher Education to survey each public institution of higher education and determine how that institution is addressing on-campus food insecurity. Then to compile and make available to each institution a guidance document that is on best practices for leveraging all available resources and opportunities for alleviating on-campus hunger. And finally, to report its findings and any recommendations to the chairman of the listed subcommittees by this November 1st. Similar to the previous bill, these three bills that are listed are identical or similar to HB 827 as it was introduced, not as it was passed. So again, HB 827 as introduced was far more expansive than the version that passed. As introduced, it would establish a program called the Hunger Free Campus Grant Program for the purpose of addressing student food insecurity at public institutions of higher education, through which each public institution of education, if it chose to participate, could, by meeting criteria set forth in the bill, be designated a hunger-free campus and be awarded a grant by SCHEV to support on-campus efforts and initiatives to eliminate student food insecurity. All three of the bills listed above, including SB 318 from this past session, patroned by Senator Rome, which is identical, and the two House bills below, which are similar, also sought to establish the Hunger Free Campus Grant Program, and all three failed. Next, we have HB 830, patroned by Delegate Cousins, and SB 314, patroned by Senator Rome. Both from this past session, those bills were identical. They passed, and they do require the Department of Education to establish the Farm to School Program Task Force for the purpose of increasing student access throughout the Commonwealth to high-quality farm to school programs. The bill defines farm to school programs as any program through which public schools could purchase and feature prominently in school meals locally produced food, or that involve experiential learning opportunities relating to local food and agriculture, including school and community garden programs and local farm visits. The bill requires the task force to collaborate with local school boards, community-based organizations, farmers, and relevant agencies and stakeholders to assess existing programs in the Commonwealth, identify best practices used by those existing programs, and then establish and provide or disseminate to each local school board guidance materials, resources, and information based on those best practices to assist schools in establishing and operating those programs, and also leveraging grant funds to support those programs. And finally, the task force is directed to collect data and make policy recommendations to local school boards as it deems appropriate. This was similar to HB 2031, patroned by Senator Rome, who was then a delegate in 2023. That failed. Next, we have HB 963, patroned by Delegate Early. From this past session, this failed, but it would have required the Department of Education to survey each school board to determine whether that school board has a policy or practice relating to excess food from public elementary or secondary schools being donated to local food banks or shelters, or programs that otherwise provide food to individuals in need. If so, how that policy or practice is implemented, and the impact that it has had on the local community, and then to either compile a guidance document or publish a superintendent's memo to be distributed to each school board that includes a list of resources and best practices on that subject to assist them in either adopting those policies or practices or implementing them. From the 2022 session now, we have HB 582, patroned by Senator Rome. This passed. This did require each public institution of higher education to essentially ensure that all students have access to accurate information about the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, including eligibility requirements and how to apply, and also advertise on the institution's website, as well as all orientation materials that are provided to each new student, the application and process for applying to SNAP. Also from 2022, and also patroned by Senator Rome, we have HB 583, which required each school board to adopt policies that prohibit the school board or any employee of the school board from denying a student participation in any extracurricular school activity for any meal that the student cannot pay or for any school meal debt that the student may owe. Next, also from the 2022 session and also patroned by Senator Rome, we have HB 587, which required each public elementary or secondary school to process all applications for student participation in the federal school breakfast and school lunch program within 6 working days after the date of receipt of the completed application. Moving on to relevant legislation relating to health, welfare, and social services. From this 2024 session, we have HB 150 patroned by Delegate Helmer, which passed, and it prohibits the Board of Social Services from requiring persons to appear in person in order to apply to participate or renew their participation in SNAP. And the bill also codifies the Department of Health's authority to implement SNAP, WIC, which currently, prior to that, was authorized only by regulation. So by codifying it, it makes it more solid, more difficult to repeal. And then in 2023, Delegate Helmer had introduced similar legislation, which failed. In the 2024 session, we have SB 320 patroned by Senator Rome, which directs the Department of Health to provide information, resources, and education to food banks regarding providing assistance to individuals completing a women, infants, and children application and explore strategies to support the outreach and education efforts for food banks. This legislation failed. Also, from the 2023 session, we have HB 2380 patroned by Senator Rome, which directed the Department of Social Services to provide information, resources, and education to food banks regarding providing assistance to individuals completing a SNAP application. This legislation passed. We have HB 2445 patroned by Delegate Bennett Parker, which falls into the miscellaneous category because it renewed what was a previously existing wholesome food donation tax credit, which would allow any farmer or person engaged in the business of farming, as the bill provides, that donates food crops or wholesome food, which the bill defines as, I think, food that meets all quality standards and requirements imposed by federal, state, and local laws and regulations, including food that may or may not be readily marketable due to appearance, age, freshness, grade, surplus, or other condition, to who donates that wholesome food to a nonprofit food bank to claim a tax credit for the taxable year beginning on the taxable year starting on January 1st, 2023, in the amount of 50% of the fair market value of such donation, not to exceed $10,000 for that one person. And that legislation passed. So that concludes that overview. And if anybody has any questions, we will take some time now to address that.
Yeah, so that was a very thorough rundown. So we'll take a minute. I do want to point out a few things because I think as we're having these conversations, it is important to know. One is that some of the reports that we are set to get back won't come until November 1st. But again, that is the same month that is our deadline in order to get some of the draft requests in. So we might get a bill recommendation started, and then once we get a report back, we can kind of get the details out. And then also some of the reasons why some of the legislation may have failed, I tried to look up a few. They got out of their original committee, but then may have met their untimely death in the Appropriations Committee. And so I was asking, because I was like, no, I think I voted for that. I did. But then, so say for instance, Delegate Bennett Parker's House Bill 686, I think it was to the tune of $173 million, but that was for both breakfast and lunch. And so maybe there's an idea for one or the other. We know that both meals are very important. But we also know that we've heard that there is a budget surplus this year, and feeding kids, really important. So things to think about. But while you were giving your presentation, we did have two more members to come in. So as others are continuing to read and digest that information, I wanted to send it to Delegate Cousins and let us know where you're from and your district and all that.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Ray Cousins. I represent the 79th District, which is located here in the city of Richmond. We're not quite sitting in the district. We're on the outskirts of it here, but we're currently sitting in Betsy Carr's district. So anyway, I am happy to be here with you all. Ending hunger, especially amongst our kids. I think a huge component of that is also making sure that all of our students are fed and nourished through nutritional meals. And so one of my focuses, obviously, is addressing the quality of meals that our students get in public schools, understanding that most of the meals that a lot of our students get, especially in areas like the city of Richmond, come from school. And so making sure that kids have the nourishment they need to show up and learn, I think is very important. So look forward to the work that we're doing on this commission.
Yes, thank you. And magically, Senator Rome has come from online to in the room and has the nickname of Lunch Lady because of all the bills that we just heard. So that's a real thing, y'all. So we'll have Senator Rome.
Thank you, Senator Bagby.
We'll have Senator Rome introduce herself.
Hi again, my name is Danica Rome. I represent the 30th District of the Senate of Virginia, which includes cities of Manassas Park, and Western Prince William County. Also just want to say thank you so much to those of you on the dais who actually worked with me on legislation, including First Delegate Cousins on HB 1314, or 314, and also Senator Craig just in committee work as well. So I really appreciate both of y'all, as well as Madam Chair, who's been my ride or die on Feeding Hungry Kids for 7 years now.
Yes, thank you. It's such a wonderful thing to be working together in a bipartisan fashion on some of these. So were there any questions from anyone on our legislative update? I know a lot of that dealt with K through 12 specifically, because I think that's where we've done probably the most work, but we also had folks from AARP and, Meals on Wheels and lots of folks telling us that there were both housing and food concerns for our older citizens. So it's a spectrum, but that was just a great rundown of what we've been able to do or what we've tried in the last few years. Okay, not seeing any questions at this point. I did want to open it up for discussion. And I think one of the questions that would really help this discussion be fruitful is, as you're thinking about your experience and where you've lived and the work that you've done, or your constituent base and the things that you've heard from your constituents, if you could tell us maybe the top 2 issues that you think could be addressed with the work of our commission. We're going to take notes, because soon we're going to have to put this into a work plan and see what it is that we can prioritize for this year, knowing that November is coming quick. But then also, as you saw, this is a 2-year kind of plan, what we might be able to do in 2025. That is a lot to ask, so I'm going to go slowly to who wants to jump? Okay, so we'll start with Senator Rome, and then if you all can jump in from there, we'll hear those ideas.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. So number one issue, in working with the task force that was mentioned earlier, the work group that is studying universal free school meals for all kids right now, that would be the single most important thing that we could do in terms of preventing childhood hunger and also eliminating the entire concept of school meal debt. So I want to give you all some examples of how things have changed in the last few years. So in 2020, during the special session, we passed my bill, HB 5113. That bill required all eligible schools to participate in the community eligibility provision, CEP, which was mentioned earlier. And after that happened, the enrollment that we saw in CEP pretty much doubled. And in the immediate onset, from the time that, about probably the 2021 session, or it's about in the next 2 years after that, we covered more than 100,000 more kids, and then about 200,000 more kids having free breakfast, free lunch, no questions asked. In Prince William County, just a few years ago, we only had, of our just under 100 schools at the time, we only had about 12 schools that were actually enrolled in CEP. Today, the start of the school year, first day back for Prince William County, 68 of our 100 schools in Prince William County are now enrolled in CEP. Last year, it was only about 44, 45 schools. And the reason with the big change is that at the federal level, the threshold to qualify went down. And so what happened was if 40% of the students in your school came from families that were eligible for free and reduced meals to begin with, then all the students would eat free. The reimbursement rate to the locality in this case, or to the school board, would be dependent on just what that percentage is. So for example, in Delegate Cousins' district, where you had universal CEP, that's because you have a threshold of students who often 50, 60, 70, even 80% of students in some schools who are qualifying based on income threshold. And then we were having other schools that were just missing it right on the outset of the threshold. And because of that, they ended up with tens of thousands of dollars of school meal debt in some cases. Great example, Osborne Park High School in Manassas, walking distance from my home. That was a school that was just outside of that eligibility criteria, and they didn't hit it, and so they ended up with tens of thousands of dollars of school meal debt this past school year. Woodbridge High School had more than $50,000 of school meal debt at the end of last year. Now, after everything happened with CEP, and the threshold has been lowered to 25%, Woodbridge is enrolled, which means they will have $0 of school meal debt this year. OP, Osborne Park, is enrolled. They will have $0 of school meal debt this year. And in fact, of our 13 schools in high schools in Prince William, which tend to have the most dollar amount of school meal debt, about 6 or 7 of them will now be enrolled in CEP, which is great. However, that still means that there will be thousands of dollars of school meal debt at Battlefield High School, at Gainesville High School, at Patriot High School, at Brentsville District High School. We still have a lot more work to do in that regard. And if we truly look at education as equal for all students, then when the government requires your child to attend school, the government should be feeding your child a full, nutritious meal, or at least have that access so that that child can decline if they or their parents want to. They should have that access for breakfast and lunch every day, no questions asked. When you do that, 3 things happen. Number 1, hungry kids get fed, which means that they're focused on their education instead of focused on their belly. Number 2, you eliminate the administrative burden on the school systems themselves. This means that you don't have staff members who are tracking down who's eligible for free meals. Oh, your form came back, but it has an error here. You're just outside the income here. What are you doing with X, Y, or Z? This was a problem. This wasn't. You have school meal debt and you need to pay. You don't. Okay, that balance, all that gone. In the city of Manassas, in the city of Manassas Park, we have universal CEP. All the kids eat free. They don't have to deal with that administrative burden, which means that staff can focus on other more important educational priorities than who has meal debt, a concept that shouldn't exist to begin with. Number 3, universal free school meals save parents up to $1,000 per school year per kid. $1,000. And at a time right now where we are talking about, hey, we've got the surplus that's coming in, we have some people who want to deal with tax relief, we have other people who want to deal with education spending. A great way to meet in the middle and to target relief for families that really need it is to make sure that those families are saving up to $1,000 per kid per school year by making sure that those meals are covered for them the whole year. So those 3 things happen when we have this. Last little point. We have 2 bits of existing precedent. Number 1 is that we had universal free school meals nationwide in the 2020-2021 school year and the 2021-2022 school year because of the federal waiver that ended up happening through USDA and all the other sort of stuff that was associated with that. So we have seen it work. We saw it work right here in Virginia. And when that happened, we had $0 of school meal debt. This past year, Northern Virginia schools alone had multi-million dollars worth of school meal debt altogether, let alone the other 124 localities throughout Virginia. So that's number 1. Number 2, our state budget for the last few cycles, basically I think since the 2020 cycle, we no longer do reduced price meals in Virginia. We have just free meals because our state budget allocates roughly $5 million per school year to transform all reduced price meals into free meals. So we have existing precedent for using the state budget already to help kids have free meals. And now with the increased CEP enrollment, now with that easier access, now that we've passed my legislation to make sure that online applications for CEP or for free and reduced meals are on every school division website. Now that we've passed another one of my bills, making sure that on back to school nights, parents actually are given that opportunity to fill it out right in the classroom in case you have issues of literacy or just you never heard it in the first place. We have more access to be able to do this than we did 6 years ago. but we still have one big thing left for that universal free school meals. And until we get there, the last bit here is that rather than have individual schools be responsible for school meal debt at the end of the year, the school division should. This means that $50,000 out of Woodbridge's budget was a huge amount of money that would have come out of anything else. And in Prince William, for the first time, they've now decided to make that a school division issue as opposed to individual schools. So I'll be introducing legislation about that in the upcoming year. But again, universal free school meals, we wouldn't even need it at that point. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Gonna look to our citizen members to see if there are any civilian comments. Mr. Oliver, please join in.
Thank you, Chairwoman Price. We work closely with a coalition of food access advocacy organizations and program providers called the Virginia Food Access Coalition. Been active for several years, elevating various policy priorities that we see on the ground and we would identify as promising solutions for improving food security in the Commonwealth. A lot of that work has been distilled into a product we call the Roadmap to End Hunger, and would love to submit that to the Commission for their consideration, whatever manner is most appropriate. Two of the top priorities we've identified in the last couple of years involve tapping into Medicaid funding. There's a movement nationally that is sort of labeled food as medicine. It's intuitive. We all know the impact food has on our health. And there are ways that we can really direct and tailor Medicaid funding to improve nutrition security for individuals who are more likely to suffer from chronic disease and diet-related illnesses. The second priority is just in the bucket of SNAP access. Virginia as a state is, last I saw, in the bottom 10 states in terms of eligible persons participating in SNAP. The most recent estimates put it at about a quarter of all eligible individuals participate. There are various reasons for that, including low benefit amounts that are largely pertinent to federal policy, but there's a lot that can be done at the state level to make the application process easier. There are public-private partnerships to improve outreach, and I think there's a lot that can be done at the state level. In particular, the group has identified senior SNAP access as a priority, given that many fewer eligible seniors participate in SNAP compared to the general population. Their minimum benefit amount can sometimes be as low as $23 a month, and bringing up that benefit amount would do a tremendous amount to improve those participation rates. So those are just two out of that full report that I would highlight at this time. Thank you.
Yes, and Mr. Oliver, thank you for that. I did pull that up, and so we'll make sure that all of the commission members get a link to that report so that we can see how that does play into the work that we have. Yes, Mrs. Fakins.
Thank you. So kind of similar to Eddie's point. I think that it's very important for us as a commission to remember what this commission is called. It's called the Commission to End Hunger. It's not the commission to shorten the line. It's the Commission to End Hunger. And when we look at that, there are three really important, very catalytic things that we need to keep into account when we're looking at our work plan. Definitely food is medicine, food as medicine, food is health. They kind of all mean the same thing. They're all being kind of floated around. There is no one uniform language for that, but they all mean the same thing. And we all know that, again, to Eddie's point, food impacts health. Health impacts our ability to work, our ability to live, our ability to thrive. So I want us to make sure that we're not just looking at food insecurity here, but we're looking at nutrition insecurity here. A second thing that I want to make sure that we're looking at and mentioning is culturally preferred foods. All right. I love that nutrition and nutritious and healthy and healthful are being thrown around. And it's great. As a dietitian, it makes my heart sing. But at the same time, whose food is my medicine? Whose food is my health? When we are talking about culturally preferred foods in school meals, it's important because a lot of our children go to school feeling already isolated and alienated because they may not have the foods that are familiar to them. So I would like to see that also be worked into a work plan. And then last but not least, we cannot forget our BIPOC and local growers here in the state of Virginia. This is extremely catalytic when it comes down to the movement to end hunger, because when you support your local communities and you're supporting your local farmers, you are also supporting economic mobility for those farmers, which then allows us to be able to have a stronger community, to be able to have more nutritious foods. A lot of these culturally preferred foods are grown by BIPOC farmers and small and are sourced by small local shop owners. And although they may not necessarily be at the quantities, we hear this all the time in the food bank, the quantities in which that, mass distributions are necessary, if you are very strategic with how you source and use these foods, you can source from BIPOC farmers, and they want to grow for you. They don't have the resources themselves. So just want to make sure that we're looking at that too.
Thank you. Anyone else? Ms. Robbins?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I completely agree with all the culturally proper foods for children. And I also think that there's a disadvantaged population that do not have the infrastructure necessary to be able to have that last leg, to get it to the schools. And so I think that the broader picture is we have two sectors. We have the students and we have the farmers that could both benefit. However, because of the social disadvantage, that leg in between, we have to fill that gap with maybe it's some sort of machinery or implement, because a lot of cafeteria workers are already overworked and underpaid. And so the way to get that to a prepped meal is a gap. I see an existing gap. I've worked for this organization since 2005. Schools want to buy from local farmers and want that local nutrition, because you lose nutritional content when road miles. But the challenge of it is that the cafeteria workers also need to have so much food ready in such a short period of time. And so how do we logically and economically lessen that gap or increase that infrastructure, which ultimately feeds into Maslow's hierarchical needs theory? Unless the very basic needs of a child are met, the educational needs aren't going to happen. But I think ourselves need to look at the picture of, we have the love, we have the passion, we have the need, but we do have this gap. Because specifically, BIPOC farmers don't have a lot of transportation, cool storage transportation that could make the transport of the food safely. And so the drawing attention, I think, to some of that could also help this commission be more successful in the end result of getting fresher food into the cafeterias.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Spencer?
And I actually would also kind of expand the logistics component also to seniors as well. We actually have an infrastructure in place when it comes to feeding children, the school system. That by no means doesn't make it easy, but there's an infrastructure there that is not present when it comes to seniors in our communities. People assume that seniors have the resources they need because they're on Social Security and Medicare. Little do they know, they do not. And oftentimes they don't have the community infrastructure that's in place to allow for the provision of social services, the provision of healthcare in a coordinated way that doesn't become a burden in and of itself for their children or their loved ones who are trying to provide meals to individuals, whether they're in the home, whether they're in a nursing facility, whether they have to go to dialysis centers. The amounts of requests that we get from individuals throughout the community who are trying to figure out how to coordinate those services to loved ones because they're outside an area, because there aren't partnerships with grocery stores, there aren't partnerships with other healthcare organizations, or there aren't partnerships even with local schools that might be able to provide as a drop-off or pick-up point, things that were definitely used and leveraged during COVID when schools were closed. There were a number of pick-up places that opened up, and schools were one of them, but there were other community-based organizations as well, some food banks when it comes to that. So I think there's the issue of getting meals to and from the individuals who need it is broader than just children. I just want to make sure that we remember that as part of the conversation, because the communities are not just our schools. They're also the food banks. They're also the hospitals. They're also the healthcare facilities. And so I just want to make sure that we keep that in mind. Second, there's cultural meals, but there's also meals that are appropriate for individuals who have varied abilities to open meals, to process meals, to eat meals. And so everyone does not have the same dental abilities as others. Everyone cannot open a package. People cannot stand up and prepare meals either. And so I want to make sure that when we're talking about food access and access to nutritious food, that we're realizing that we're not just talking about medically tailored groceries or medically tailored meals or prescription produce or kind of whatever the name or the nomenclature of the day is, and that we're looking at and providing access to food that isn't behind a red velvet rope. And that individuals who are able to or need a home-delivered meal get a home-delivered meal. Not fresh vegetables. While they're healthy, that's great, but they may not be able to eat them. Their bodies may not be able to process them due to their respective health conditions. So I just want to make sure that as we're thinking about meals and food, that we are thinking about the full spectrum of need, our children and our grandparents, all encompassing, because we have multi-generational households, and we also have people in the middle, like myself, who are trying to deal with parents as well as school-aged children, and it is a struggle.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you to our sandwich generation for all that you do. I'll come right back to you. Delegate Anthony?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I thank you for your comments. They resonate very well for what we deal with down in our district, and as a matter of fact, in the Hampton Roads area. And because there are a lot of community partners who are standing in the gap and providing those services. And a lot of times those community partners, when we try to supply them with, funding, especially if we put in a budget amendment to make sure that these folks who have been mitigating these challenges for a number of years, that we run into the restrictions of the Virginia Code. And sometimes the pass-through funding issue gets politicized, especially when that pass-through funding has to go through a local state government, a locality. And a lot of times, these organizations who've been mitigating those challenges, and they're not members of these food coalitions, and they are actually filling in the gap with making sure that these seniors get those services that we need. So I'm taking a look at, what is that process, and what are the barriers, and what has been happening. And because there is a situation right now within Hampton Roads that we're dealing with right now, we want to get these partners who are trying to mitigate these challenges to make sure that they can continue that work.
Yeah. Delegate Roan, Senator Roan.
Old habits and such. That's all right. When it comes from Madam Chair, it's okay. So I want to just applaud especially the citizen members who I just heard from, especially because that was all music to my ears, and music's kind of a big part of my life. So thank you for all of that. On the drive down here, I was literally thinking about culturally preferred foods, and especially in the greater Manassas area, where we have people from all around the world who live in Manassas, but especially the largest Salvadorian diaspora in Virginia. It is so significant, and I cannot underline, put asterisks, bold, italicize, and everything else this enough. It is so significant that we meet families where they are with food that is not only familiar with to students and to families, but at the same time is also accessible to them. And so just one issue that I see especially is that foods that are based on basically a Mediterranean diet or a Northern European diet tend to be what we consider the default for where things come from, right? And then everything else branches out from there. Unless you are Senator Warner and then you're mayo and tuna, that's just gross. But what I want to kind of get at here is I want to make sure that every student who goes to our schools knows that there's going to be something there that they can eat, something there that they enjoy, and above all, something that is good for them. Regarding the accessibility part, one of the reasons we actually passed one of my bills in 2020 to allow restaurants and other food service shops, even like Sheetz and Wawa and such, to participate in the federal restaurant meals program is because there has been a stigma that has been attached to EBT and attached to SNAP about hot prepared meals being considered a luxury. And well, if you can just go and pick up a hot meal, then you can afford X, Y, or Z. Why is the taxpayer paying on my dime? Why are you paying for this hot meal? Number one, a hot meal is not a luxury. A hot meal is food. It's a meal. Number two, that same card you could take into that Sheetz or that Wawa or wherever else, and anything in the refrigerated section, regardless of nutritional value, eligible to you. But God forbid someone heats it up on the other side of the counter. That drove me up the wall. I could not understand, believe this. Next part, here's an issue that we have not brought up yet, food deserts. If you live in a food desert, or you live in a place where the grocery store closes by the time you are even coming back from work or back from whatever else it is, and that station or that pizza shop, that sub shop, whatever else it is, that's the place that's open, then you should be able to eat. You shouldn't be able to just have to go home hungry that night. And especially if you're disabled, of differing abilities, whatever else it is, I can tell you from a member of my own immediate family that she would struggle to simply open up a piece of plastic that's anything thicker than film. And so we have to shop accordingly about that, right? That is not abnormal in Virginia. I don't know what the percentage and ratio is of number of residents who have a sort of disability. But if we keep that in mind, then what we can do is really try to make food as accessible, as nutritional, and hopefully as tasty as possible, while at the same time keeping the financial impact and as low as possible, and answering the question, who's going to pay for it in a way that's not going to break the bank. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other, sure, Ms. Carr.
Thank you for everything I've heard today. It's very encouraging. I just wanted to point attention to two of the items that we've heard about, the State Council of Higher Education for Virginia, the HB 827, to conduct a survey on campus of food insecurity, which has been increasing across the nation as an important issue for the many colleges and universities across the country, but there really hasn't been a timely study. So it's good to see that. Also, I'm working with students on sustainable dining, which is sort of a parallel interest where we can address some of the other concerns that were raised earlier about how do we get the producers in Virginia, since we're such a place that produces so much agriculture and gets so much of our income through agriculture, to actually source and to procure more local, regional produce as well as other items for dining on campus and make it healthy for not only the students but also for the planet to be ecologically and environmentally sustainable. So there are ways that you can do that, and you can build that into policies. And I actually have a PhD student who's going to be focusing on that as one of her studies. And second, I want to bring attention to the issue around that Senator Donica Rome brought up, that there's a precedent from other states that have actually passed legislation to allow SNAP benefits to be used by people who are disabled and elderly. So there's opportunities we can learn from how other states did that we can maybe use similar strategies to make a successful legislation to provide that for people who are eligible in Virginia. And third, I just want to bring up the farm to school legislation. I think there was something, the HB 830, to establish a task force and to collect data, see what's going on, and make policy recommendations to school boards and the General Assembly. I think there's opportunities where we can also learn from other states, such as Arizona, New Mexico, that have actually earmarked a certain proportion of the produce has to come from local, regional sources. And that might be a way to address both the agricultural issues as well as the hunger and food security issues of the population.
Thank you. Looking around. Delegate Cousins? Sure.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So on the topic of food deserts, I know that the General Assembly established the Virginia Food Access Investment Fund in 2021 to support community-supported agriculture, so community farms, and then also the Healthy Corner Store Initiative, which I believe provides incentives to corner stores in areas that the USDA has identified as food deserts. And so if we could get a report, because I don't see where the Virginia Department of Health for the Healthy Corner Store Initiative or the Virginia Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services for the Food Access Investment Fund have issued reports. At least I don't see those on their website. So if we could get reports on how those programs are going, what we can do to help spread the word, any sort of education that those agencies are doing, I think that would be good.
No, thank you for that. I do want to open it up at this time. I know we have some folks in our audience. If there is anyone that would like to add any points for discussion, now would be the appropriate time. Well, come on up. Please share your name, where you're from, and your input on our conversation, and welcome.
My name is Nichelle Buffalo, and I'm from Chesapeake, and I live in the 92nd District. And I started an organization, it'll be 15 years old this year, because I actually live in a food desert. And in our food desert, we've been fighting food insecurities now for 15 years. We started off by feeding 25 individuals Thanksgiving, now we're feeding 5,000 on Thanksgiving. The barriers are there, the accessibility is there. We feed over 8 senior communities a month, and we go into the communities. We break it down by their culture. We break it down whether their dietary needs, whether they're gluten, whether they're vegans, and we make sure that that grocery bag is catered to that. It doesn't make sense if we just take them a grocery bag and they can't eat it because it's going to sit there. So what y'all are saying today is true. We've gotten through some barriers, but we are at the barrier now where we were awarded funding, but there's a barrier. There's always a barrier when it comes to food access and feeding. So, we're here as Buffalo Family and Friends Community Days established now, it'll be 15 years, and we're here to help end hunger, and we're willing to help the state at any level we can. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for being here. Seeing no further hands at this current moment, so what I think would be helpful is, and please, if anyone was not able to give a comment thus far, know that our emails are open. If you're like, oh, I should have said so-and-so, please, we can exchange emails and keep the conversation going if you'll go through I'm not sure what's the appropriate thing, if it's me or if it's our clerk's office, because we do have transparency laws that we want to make sure that we're adhering to, but we would love if you have any presentations, any reports, any links or anything, definitely send my way so that we can make sure the entire commission gets those so that we can continue to get the information that we need. But we also want to make sure that we're creating a work plan that is doable such that, like we said before, we do have actual tangible recommendations. So maybe from this November, it's actually looking at recommendations that other entities have already made. As we've heard, there's some reports and some work that's going on. And potentially we might hear a presentation on what some other states are doing. I know NCSL, National Conference of State Legislators, has some resources as well, so we can see we do not need to reinvent the wheel, but we do need to invent a good Virginia wheel that we can use for our Commonwealth. So we'll keep that conversation going. And I'm thinking, please don't quote me, but I'm thinking what we could probably do is have some presentations and an all virtual meeting in September keep our work going, keep our conversations going. Because we can't have back-to-back, we would then be in person, where we could probably start voting on some priorities for this year, and then kind of have conversations going into a November meeting, which would be not guaranteeing, that it was in person or virtual, but after we've received some of those reports back from some other entities, so that the legislators will have our marching orders for the 2025 session, and then we can start seeing what is it that we want to discuss and what is it that we want to do moving into the 2025 calendar year. It is our hope to have our dates all chosen. So you'll probably be getting some polls soon to see your availability so that we can already get those on our calendars. And then also make sure that you're filling out any of the forms that you got today for your time and travel here. Are there any concerns, questions, or comments as it pertains to the potential work plan that we might be devising over the next few weeks before our October meeting? Any closing comments or questions before we conclude our work? Yes, Ms. Robbins.
This may have been covered, but I just want to ask, is it just at school, or are we also addressing after-school meals as well to be qualified? Yeah. Because a neighboring county of ours did a survey, and 40 children went home on Fridays and didn't eat till Monday.
Right, and those backpack programs that we have with our wonderful food banks, we can discuss that. But I would say in general, our answer for this commission is from birth to death and any time in between. So
I like that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, just to respond to that, we actually passed 2 pieces of legislation regard to after-school meals. Yours truly happened to carry both of these bills. So one of them requires all eligible schools to participate in the federal after-school meal program. And so because of that, for example, at Osborne High School in the city of Manassas, they provide this. It used to be on Thursday night, it might still be. I just remember that off the top of my head. And then another one that we did is we allow excess school meals, so excess breakfast, lunch, whatever wasn't consumed and is still edible for, at the end of the day, to be distributed to students at the end of the school day, free of charge. And we're not carding, we're not saying, hey, who needs it, based on need, whatever. If you're hungry enough at the end of the school day where you need to pick up a meal from a cafeteria, have at it. That's the way we look at it. It reduces waste, it feeds kids. And I want to close by just telling you a very brief story from when I was a news reporter. I had interviewed a teacher who was at Osborne High School in the city of Manassas. And she noticed one of her students had been very hungry after having bad mood, bad whatever, blah, 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 and was kind of shelled. And she started bringing food into the classroom to keep in her desk, and she would give it to him, talk after class and stuff, and he would start opening up and everything. And she was also noticing that the same student who came in on Monday morning wearing the same clothes that he had left in on Friday night. That story is indicative of a couple things. Number one, that food insecurity absolutely exists in Virginia at our young levels and as well as for non-students as well. And then the second part on this is that when this is what's so overlooked in our school system, children who are experiencing homelessness, families experiencing homelessness, also need access to some basic things, such as a washer and dryer for clothes, that some schools we've seen are now adopting. And it kind of ties it together, because when you have the ability to have some clean clothes and everything like that, have the ability to get food at the same school, it's one-stop shop for the families that need it the most. Very few people in a given school are going to always be accessing it, but those who do, it's a life changer. And it's so important that we look at all the things that contribute not just to poverty, but to food insecurity in general.
Yeah, thank you so much. The work that you all are doing in your everyday lives is very important, and that's why we're so glad to have you here. And I think I can speak for all of my colleagues. The work that happens on boards and commissions is very important to our legislative proposals, and so know that what you're doing is going to impact what we're able to do in the legislative session for 2025. So I want to thank everyone for their time, attention. You'll be getting those polls to fill out, and then, of course, the the dates of our meetings will be published, and we'll have further public comment and public input. So thank you all for tuning in from home. Thank you for being here, and this meeting is adjourned.
Nice job, Madam Chair.